Right then, the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix. To be honest, I wish they just called it the Catalan Grand Prix, because that would be a bit more consistent with the kind of things that we expect from, say, MotoGP. But we call it the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix, or officially was it the MSC Cruises Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix, and we need to get into talking about it because there is a lot to talk about. Starting off with the fact that Sir Lewis Hamilton gets another win. His first win for Ferrari in a Grand Prix, because as a Hamilton fan I will point out, he did win the sprint in China last year, but a first Grand Prix win for Ferrari. Jeez, I was emotional seeing that. I was emotional listening to his interviews after the race when he talked about how it was to do with his fan base and the team that helped him get back into the sport, especially after last season. He said last season was really tough. And as he was going around, I was thinking about the fact that Fernando Alonso before the race said that this could be his last race in Barcelona, because it's not on the calendar next season. And for me, a lot of the time I was thinking that could be the same for Lewis. We don't know how much longer he's going to keep going in F1. So it was great to see Lewis pick up the win today. It really was. And I think he was the best driver. I think the Mercs, over a single lap, yeah, they were better. But Ferrari had the better long-run car. And what's more, Ferrari's strategy actually worked this time. I know we make jokes about the Ferrari master plan, but I think even without Alonso's VSC, there was a strong chance Lewis was going to win the race. Because Merc pit their drivers to cover off Lando in the McLaren. Lewis had the run on those mediums that he was going to make go longer. And so he would have had at least 5, possibly 10 lap fresher tyres at the end on those hards. We saw the drop off that Lewis managed to make the most of compared to George, even after the after that final VSC for Antonelli and Leclerc. But yeah, I think Lewis was the best driver. I think the Ferrari had the long run, and I think they needed a little bit of luck to get such a win, but I think that it was quite a convincing win. I know for Lewis afterwards, he said it was quite emotional to think 30 years since Schumacher's first win in red at Barcelona, and he said that was a really lovely thing for him to be able to do. His 7th win at the track, can you believe that? I think it's worth talking about the teammates though, Antonelli and Leclerc. Leclerc, he did have the measure of Lewis, especially in some places over the course of the weekend, until he crashed in qualifying in Q3. And that just set up what turned out to be a complete unravelling this weekend. I assume that he must have run over a mirror or something at some point. Possibly late last season, possibly in pre-season testing, because he seems to just be in bad luck. And he's a long-term contract with Ferrari, so he's going to hope that luck turns around sometime soon, eh? But yeah, it was power steering failure for Leclerc today. He very nearly ended up colliding with a slow-moving Isaac Hadjar coming off the line at the start of the race. But yeah, it was a good recovery drive that went unrewarded. And for Antonelli, he wasn't at 100%. I don't think he was at his true potential. But at the same time, championships are won by where you are on your bad days. And even on what was a bad day then, he forced George Russell to basically be in a kind of 2016 Spanish Grand Prix situation. So 10 years ago. Because I swear, when I saw those two silver arrows battling when Antonelli went on to take advantage over George, I was like, this is going to be 2016. They were going into turn 4, and I was like, nope. I've seen this one before. I know how it ends. But it was impressive with Antonelli, especially given, his neck was giving out towards the end of the race, that he was able to do so well. Behind them, Norris was comfortably clear of Verstappen and Piastri. I don't know if that's because this is a good track for Norris. I think last year Piastri won though, didn't he? But I think Norris has finally gotten up to speed with the car. And I would say the difference between, say, Norris and Piastri is almost the same kind of thing, but slightly different between Russell and Antonelli. Antonelli only had 1 year in the sport before the rules changed. And so, as a result, he was able to just hit the ground running with this rule set. And, yeah, well, Russell and Norris graduated at the same time. It could be easier to switch across if either you've got lots of experience in different types of car, or you've got very little experience in the previous type of car. So, Norris has managed to make a click now, in a way that you'd expect George Russell would be able to. But at least he's managed to do it compared to Piastri, whose F1 experience has solely been with that previous generation of ground effect cars. Verstappen just showed his raw talent. I'd say that's why he gets 4th. But he's still not fully gelling with this generation of car, or how everything interacts with this generation. He had the measure of Hadjar, and Hadjar's weekend was moreover compounded by a bad start to the race, because in qualifying there was very little separating them, which is good for the what is it? Is it sophomore season? Is that second season? Hadjar got clear of the 2 Alpines. Colapinto had the measure of Gasly in qualifying. Gasly had the measure of Colapinto in the race. I think that's where we're at the moment with those 2 guys. But for Gasly, who's just had his podium reinstated at the expense of Hadjar for Monaco, it's a comfy weekend. Points rounded out by the 2 racing bulls of Lawson and Lindblad. They were all the cars who were 1 lap down. We had some 2 laps down towards the end. Bortoleto, Sainz and Ocon. Sainz having a bit of a recovery from a dodgy start to the weekend. Perez was 14th. And then classified 15th, 16th and 17th for Claire Antonelli and Behrman, because poor Alex Albon went back out after having to remove, what was it, an FIA camera that had fallen off the car. Finishes 11 laps down, is finished, but not classified. Because he's, 90% race distance, so the 3 guys ahead of him are classified. He's not, even though he was running at the end. And on the weekend where he becomes the longest serving Williams driver in the team's history, in terms of most race starts, I think it was in 96. Here's to hoping the 100th will be a lot better for him, because where would that be? Would that be Budapest? If it hadn't been for those 2 race cancellations, it would have been Silverstone. That would have been really nice. But let's talk standings anyway. Antonelli's lead shrinks both to Lewis and George, but Lewis gets clearer of George. It's 156 for Antonelli still. It's 115 for Hamilton and 106 for Russell. Leclerc stays static in 4th on 73, whilst Lando catches up to him. Sorry, Lando's on 73. Charles Leclerc's on 75. Verstappen is behind Piastri. Piastri 6th on 68. Verstappen 7th on 55 from Gasly, Hadjar and Lawson. And yeah, the team standings. Mercedes on 262, Ferrari on 190. The gap has gone down. McLaren are on 141 in 3rd, Red Bull on 89 in 4th, Alpine in 5th, quite comfortably in 5th as well on 60 points. And yes, still 10 of the 11 teams have scored points thanks to Alonso's point in Monaco. Though Cadillac, it wasn't exactly the worst weekend. They were comfortably ahead of Aston Martin. In qualifying, they were just off the back of where the Williamses were, in theory, or just off the back of where Albon was. They were half a second off of Ocon, who was 17th. But they were comfortably on their own, ahead of Aston Martin. So it's one of those things where the lack of running in, say, testing, really, you could argue, harmed the likes of Williams, who didn't show up, Aston Martin, who showed up late. But they rewarded the ones who ran quite a lot, like Mercedes, Ferrari, and you could argue Red Bull. I think McLaren did get some running, but for instance, Ferrari ran quite early on. They ran in all the conditions as well, unlike some other teams. But those are my thoughts, feelings, and observations anyway, folks. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for joining, and I'm impressed I've managed to go so long without breaking into a coughing fit, because apparently I'm not doing physically well. I blame hay fever, but that's neither here nor there. Till next time, folks, from me, it's bye for now.